Okay, let's dive into this. We spend pretty much our entire lives looking at something. Our eyes are constantly working, right? Processing shapes, colors, movement, all of it. But have you ever stopped to wonder what happens if you take all of that away? What does your brain actually see when there's nothing to see? So just imagine for a second a world with no edges, an ocean of perfectly uniform light with absolutely no reference points. What would that even feel like? You'd probably think, oh, I just see a blank white wall, right? Well, when scientists started asking this exact question back in the 1930s, the answers they found were way, way stranger than that. They gave this state a name, the Ganzfeld, which is German for a complete field. It's basically an experimental setup designed to give our eyes a perfectly homogeneous, patternless field of view. The original researcher, a guy named Wolfgang Metzger, created it in 1930 by having people stare at a giant, perfectly whitewashed surface. He wanted to strip vision down to its bare essentials to see what the brain would do on its own. All right, so let's imagine we're stepping into the Ganzfeld. What's the very first thing people experience when they're plunged into this kind of visual void? This is how Metzger's original participants described it. Not a flat wall, but a mist of light. A fog. They said it felt three-dimensional, like being submerged in a glowing cloud that just stretched on forever. I mean, it's a completely disorienting, almost dreamlike state. And, it gets weirder. As the brain desperately struggles to find a pattern, it just starts inventing them. Some people see geometric shapes, like a cracked sheet of ice or a spider web. Others become super aware of the tiny imperfections inside their own eyes, and they start seeing the shadows of their own blood vessels. And for some people, the brain just goes for it and produces full-blown hallucinations. But what happens if you stay in this void for a little longer, and then we add color to the mix? Well, the results get even more bizarre. Researchers really wanted to know how the brain handles a single unchanging color. The simplicity of this next experiment is it's brilliant. In the 1950s, researchers came up with this really clever setup using halved ping pong balls taped over people's eyes. They'd shine a colored light on them, creating a perfect, personal Ganzfeld. And then something truly remarkable happened. After just a few minutes of staring into this sea of red or green, the color completely vanished, leaving them in a world of gray. This simple observation kicked off a huge scientific debate. I mean, think about it. If your eye is still receiving red light, why does your brain just stop seeing red? Is the system just getting bored? So you had two camps. On one side, you had Hochberg's team, and they argued that without any contrast or edges, the color-detecting cells in our eyes just kind of get tired and stop firing. The brain gets no new information, so it just perceives nothingness, like a dark gray or black. But other researchers, like Helson and Judd, they disagreed. They ran their own experiments and found the color loss was pretty minor. They thought that the tiny, involuntary movements our eyes are always making were enough to keep those cells stimulated. This whole conflict really highlighted just how critical change is for our perception. Now, fading colors and strange geometric patterns, that's one thing. But for some people, the Ganzfeld triggers something way more profound, a total shutdown of their visual system.
And this isn't just about seeing blackness or gray. This is about the feeling of not seeing at all. It's the most extreme response to the Ganzfeld, and it really reveals something fundamental about how our brains are wired.
A researcher named W. Cohen called this experience a blank out. Participants would report that their sense of vision had just completely vanished. They weren't even sure if their eyes were open or closed. It was a temporary functional blindness, triggered by nothing more than sensory monotony. And this wasn't just a subjective feeling. When scientists measured people's brain activity, they found these blink-out periods lined up perfectly with huge bursts of alpha waves. Alpha waves are the brain's resting signal. It's the same pattern you have when your eyes are closed. So the visual part of the brain wasn't just confused, it was actively deciding to take a break and just go into standby mode. So what's the big takeaway from all these bizarre experiences? Why does staring into a void make our brains either invent things, ignore colors, or just shut down completely? Well, it all comes down to a really core principle of our biology. This kind of disorientation isn't just a lab curiosity. It has real-world importance. The Ganzfeld creates something called empty field myopia, where the eye doesn't know what to focus on. High-altitude pilots experience the exact same thing when they're staring into a vast, featureless sky. They call it sky myopia. This makes understanding the Ganzfeld really crucial for safety in aviation and even space travel. All of these experiments point to one powerful conclusion. Our eyes and brain do not work like a camera, just passively recording light. Instead, our visual system is an active hunter of change. It's designed to detect edges, contrast, and movement. And when you deprive it of that, it simply doesn't know what to do. In the absence of change, the brain fills in the gaps. It makes things up, or it just gives up. The Ganzfeld isn't an illusion. It's a window into how our perception is actually constructed. It proves that what we experience as seeing is really an active interpretive process. Which leaves you with a fascinating question, doesn't it? Even in this very moment, with everything you're looking at, how much of what you're seeing is actually out there, and how much of it is just your brain's best guess?